Good morning, everyone. Good to see you this morning. Welcome to church. Glad that you're here and glad that we can come and just spend this time together focusing on who's important and what is important in each of our lives. But we're going to sing a couple of songs as we get started today. We'll stand to sing them. And the first one says, "Give thanks to the Lord, our God and King. His love endures forever." Are you thankful this morning? Have you got thankful hearts? Think about the things and the people that you're thankful for, and we'll give God thanks for them as we go through this service together. As you know, I promised last week that we're going to have tea and coffee, which I've been reliably informed is provided, so don't rush away today. Get a chance to connect with each other. And I know we're a wee bit quieter. There's a few families down with the COVID, unfortunately, who are watching online with whole loads of other people. We'll think about that in a wee minute. But we're going to sing these two songs just as we get started with thankful hearts, coming and giving God thanks for his faithfulness to each of us. Let's pray and then we'll sing together. Father, as we come this morning, we thank you that you're here right now. And we thank you that we can give you praise. Thank you for all the good things that you have done in our lives, that you're doing in our lives, and that you're going to do. And I pray, Lord, that we would be thankful for each other today as a church, whether we're here in the building or we're connected online. I pray, Lord, you would give us thankful hearts for the circumstances that we find ourselves in, knowing that you are with us. And I thank you, Lord, today that we can come and give you worship for who you are. You are so faithful, and we give you praise right now for these things in your name. Amen. Let's stand together as we sing. We'll sing the next song. Just stay standing if you're able. And this one is "Lord, I Come Before Your Throne of Grace."
Lord, I come before your throne of
Good, so you remember last week we gave you the announcement that the young team were going to have a lock-in on Friday night to raise some funds for Chloe, who is heading to Capernwray to be able to do some studies there. And everybody arrived and everybody gets set up for what was going to be quite an exciting night. And thankfully, Adam managed to capture a lot of footage to let you catch a glimpse into some of the things that they were involved in. So I want to just show this wee clip just now and then give you a wee update on how much they raised at that event. So enjoy. This was Friday night's lock-in.
Tonight we're doing a lock-in to raise money for me going to Capernwray Bible School. Tonight we've got loads of fun activities planned. We've got games, we've got cooking, we've got tuck shop. It's going to be a really good night. Have a see what we've got in store.
Much money as possible to give to Chloe to go to Bible school down at Capernwray. Emma and the team have worked really, really hard and put together this amazing list of activities that we can't wait to do with all of them.
We have lots of exciting activities. We've just finished our steel ball and line dancing. We're looking forward to a talent show a bit later on, and also some FIFA, some football, some hide and seek, some bacon and lots of food, and maybe a movie later on.
So the next part of our night is going to be very, very exciting. The kids don't know this, but we've picked two songs at random that each team is going to have to perform, and they don't know what it is. So they're going to have to come up with this routine in an hour, which is a challenge, but we'll see how it all turns out. Stay tuned to see what happens.
Right, we've got a surprise for the kids. They think that they're the only ones doing the talent show, but actually we're surprising them with a leaders dance, and it's to Joseph, Any Dream Will Do. Hope they enjoy it.
Guys, it's 12:30, finished football, knackered, it's time for hide and seek.
It's time to play Interceptors with our glow sticks. It's currently 10 to 7, and although most of our campus have had a wee sleep, there are some who have made it through the night. For those who have fallen asleep, let's go and wake them up. Good morning, campers! It's time to wake up!
So that is our lock-in over. It's 12 hours of fun and activities, games, lots of food. Some people haven't even slept. I've hardly slept, but it's been a great time.
I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone that came and spent this 12 hours locked in the church, absolutely exhausted, just so that they can support me. Yeah. Thanks everyone.
Awesome. Massive thank you to the team who made that happen. And they managed to raise, drum roll, Fraser, 327 quid, which was pretty decent for 12 hours. They had a tuck shop, they paid their minimum of £10 donation to get in, but it looked absolutely brilliant. We were gutted for some of the young team, though, who during the week managed to catch COVID and couldn't get, but it means that we're going to have to do it again so that everybody can get involved. I actually thought about one for the adults, which I think would be a lot better. And, I would need to do it during the day for 8 to 8 for Scotty. But listen, well done to everybody who took part, for everyone who was there and who raised that money to help Chloe. And we're going to do some other events, some other things to help raise these funds for Chloe to be able to get to Capernwray. But she's so appreciative of what a great fun night. Although I was disappointed to hear that folks did go to sleep. Because when I used to do that as a young person, we weren't allowed to go to sleep. That was part of the rules. And Samuel on that chair, we couldn't wake him up to get him away. We were hoovering and everything round about him. But we managed to get there. Anyway, so thanks, Adam, for putting that together for us as well to catch a glimpse. Today's quite a significant day. And we're going to think it in a wee minute as I come into my message. After Lois is going to sing a song to us. But this is exactly 2 years from when we had our first ever recorded church service. Sometimes there's dates that stick in your mind and times where you remember back. But the week leading up to this point, as we were looking as leaders to figure out what are we going to do, what's going to happen, every day things were changing. And we suddenly realised that short notice we were going to have to, rather than having a service in person, with a wee camera. We did that, which was a year ago last week, with an iPhone perched at the back, Stuart Bowles cheering on his side because we'd put the camera wrong and everything else. But we had our first ever recorded service and had our first time having a YouTube channel and our first time sending it out to Facebook. And the complete uncertainty, thinking that it would just be a couple of weeks until we got back to normal. Not realising what was going to come ahead. And I want to think about that this morning as I come to share about a big change that happened in the life of our church, in our own lives, in our families, as we went through. But I watched that first service on YouTube the other day. At that time, we thought it was brilliant. Now, it was all right, but we had the lights so dark you couldn't see anybody. The worship team were up here literally having 10 minutes before plugged things in to see if we could get it to record. And we, in faith, put that first message out. It was all about calming the storm. And it was really interesting looking back at the statistics of YouTube alone, not including Facebook, is that from that first time, we've had 57,500 views of the videos of Craig Albert Church from people all over the world. People who will message us from Canada, from Africa, from Australia, you name it, who tune into our wee church here in Cumbernauld. And who would have thought that that change would have taken us from here to have a global impact? And as part of that service, I asked Lois at the end of it to sing a song that Philippa Hannah sung, and it was a song called Even Now. And when life is hard and life is tough, and when the storms come in, this song really expresses the whole point of even now, I can still trust you. And we're going to think about that in a wee minute. So Lois, come up and sing this for us. And then after this song's finished, the young team can head down to see why. Don't leave during it though, because you'll miss out on a beautiful song. But the lyrics will hopefully come up on the screen as well for you to be able to read. And I hope these will be an encouragement. Thinking back 2 years. In fact, we also sung Lord, I Come Before Your Throne of Grace at that service as well. But this was a song that we ended with, and I wanted to share it today, hopefully encourage you.
Suddenly the lights go out. Everything I've known till now is swept away. Will it ever be the same? Staring at a silent sky, begging for a reason why the story changed.
Right, good. I don't know if there's any of the young team going downstairs. You can head down just now. Douglas, you on the day? Do you have a good week skiing? A good week skiing is when you can come in without crutches. So, glad that you're safe, buddy, and you're back with us. But it's interesting to look back, isn't it? And to think that 2 years ago at this very moment, we didn't know what was going to happen next. As we waited for announcements for the government to kick in, to find out what was going to happen. And in effect, the whole world being placed on pause. Whole countries shut down. The world in the same position. All because of one case that happened at the other side of the world. That then played havoc with everyone else. It's amazing to think that what we thought was just going to be a wee flu, 5 to 6 weeks we'll get back to normal. Someday we'll come up with the antidote. The temporary restrictions would kick in. People were having to think fast and move quick. And that included us here at the church. Having to figure out new ways of doing things. This week on my Facebook, it came up and said, 2 years ago on this day, you downloaded Zoom for the first time. At that time, I had never heard of Zoom before. And suddenly we found ourselves as a church depending on this piece of software to be able to connect and be with each other in our living rooms and enjoying being able to pray together at that moment in time as we went through some of the hardest circumstances we've ever went through as a church. We were still being able to be together with one click. All this happened 3 weeks into my new role. I couldn't believe it. Literally the 3rd of March we had that wee service up here. The place was hoaching. Loads of people in. And my role had changed, and 3 weeks later there wasn't a church to be in the room. Standing in here every week looking at that camera. In fact, it's up there now. And honestly, never knowing what was coming week to week and knowing what was going to happen. And we all have moments in our lives that stick with us, don't we? Good moments where we celebrate, and other times we would rather forget what has happened. And I know for you here and for those who are watching online, that might be your experience looking back at the big changes that have happened in our lives over these past 2 years. Dates that are etched into our calendars and our mind, moments in time we would rather forget or will remember forever. And it shapes us and who we are becoming day by day. It has shaped our world in such a significant way. And as I think about it, the things that have changed for me personally, things that have changed for our family, for our community, for our church, and for our world. Living with the uncertainty that we've had has been completely unsettling. We've almost lived with a nervous energy for these 2 years, just waiting for the next announcement, the next lot of bad news, the next lot of restrictions, because we've seen these big changes. But you know, what I want to share with us today, and as you reflect on the things that have changed for you over these past 24 months, as we look at what has changed and has shaped us to who we are today, in some ways we could see COVID as something that is completely negative. But when I look at what God has been doing in our lives and in our church, I can actually see positive. I can see that God has transformed lives in ways that we could never have imagined. If we had never been online, would we have ever connected with Chloe? If we had never been online, would we have ever connected with the folks in our community who have driven past here 100 times, but with a billboard that's out there reminded them that church is online, and we might never know who has ever watched any of these services? When God has spoke through the people that have stood here and shared over this time. And yes, things have changed. But I want to tell you today, and my message is really simple as we come, is that even though our world has changed, and even though our lives has changed, Jesus hasn't changed. And it tells us that in Hebrews, and we're going to think about it in a minute. But the fact that Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever as we see in this passage, gives us confidence, gives us hope, gives us contentment, and helps us as we live. As we know things are uncertain, but knowing that he knows everything. When things change, it's sometimes difficult to understand why they change and how they change. And change isn't always a word that is well associated with church. There's that wee story of the people going to the leaders and saying, listen, we would love to make some changes. And they says, change? How many leaders does it take to change a light bulb? Change? Church doesn't really cope very well with change sometimes, but we had to change. We had to adapt. But the one thing that never changed in this whole time was Jesus. And as I was reading this passage in Hebrews chapter 13, and I want to share another couple of wee simple thoughts with you today. It talks about, in verse 5, the idea of being content. It says, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have. Because God said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. We've needed that promise, haven't we? Over these past 2 years. I'll never leave you. I'll never forsake you. Verse 6, so we say with confidence, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me? Words from Psalm 118. We can be confident, as we thought about last week, of where our help comes from. But then it says, remember your leaders who spoke the word of God to you. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. And verse 8 says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. And I'm praying that over these past months, people have experienced the real change of heart that comes from finding Jesus. Change of priorities, change of direction, because it's okay to change. Don't ever be afraid of change. You know, I remember somebody saying to me years ago, oh, I've always been like this. I'll never change. I'm saying, well, that's actually not accurate if you're living a life of faith. We should be open to change, to become more like Jesus. I say it all the time, and I believe that that's the key to our lives. Over the past 6 weeks, we've been thinking about getting things right. And I believe that if we can get this right, being able to see where Jesus fits in the grand scheme of our lives, he is before, he is now, and he's forever. And that should bring us contentment, it should bring us confidence. And we should be able to consider these things as we discover the changes that can happen in the inside. When you are saved, when you are transformed, when you discover the power of the Holy Spirit, creating in you a pure heart and allowing us to know the presence of Jesus every single step, because it's where it starts. And we've thought about that often. How many of you filled out your census, by the way? Not to alarm you, but by law, it has to be completed today. And this is a chance for the government to have a look and to see what changes have happened during the time since the last census. A tick box experience, which is so confusing, and there's more boxes in it than ever trying to get you to figure out who you are, where you came from, and what you're all about. But it's interesting that this data will be taken and it'll be looked at, and they'll be looking to say, what changes have occurred from this moment to this moment? How is life different from this moment in time till now? And I have to ask myself that question spiritually every single day. How different am I today from yesterday? Am I depending more on Jesus? Am I more content with the faith that I have? Do I have more confidence in my relationship with him? And do I recognize it in the changes that happen in me? He never changes. He is the constant. And as much as the census is asking us to do a tick box experience, Jesus is wanting us to think outside the box, to experience him in new ways. You know the story of Jairus' daughter? And Jairus comes to Jesus and he's so concerned because his wee girl is so sick. And he asked Jesus to come with him to the house to heal him. And this was a big move for Jairus because this had to have a bit of a change of heart for him, who he was associated with the religious leaders. And to come and throw himself at Jesus' feet was a massive change for this man. But he believed that Jesus could change his daughter's situation. He believed that Jesus could move in power in that instance. They had tried everything else. And as Jesus was heading to go to Jairus' house, there was an interruption. Things changed again. When this woman reached out with enough faith just to touch the hem of Jesus' garment, believing that that would be enough to change her and heal her. And Jesus stops and he says, "Who touched me?" And the disciples are looking and saying, "What do you mean, who touched you? There's people all around us." But Jesus knew that someone from a distance had experienced God's power through him. And he stopped. And it changed the whole dynamic of what was happening. And as the woman came forward, and as she had been healed from that lifelong illness, her life was changed in that moment. As the servants came and says, "Don't bother the master anymore, your daughter's dead," everything changed again. But Jesus wanted them to believe. And he went with them to the house. Talitha cum. Wee girl got up and she came to life. Get her something to eat. And her situation had changed. And even in the interruption that had happened along that way, God was still doing what God was doing. And I believe that's been our experience as a church. COVID interrupted what we had planned. But God showed us what was going to happen next was going to actually have a bigger impact than what may have been already planned. It was going to reach out that people from clicking online could almost touch the hem of the garment and feel Jesus' power and transformation from that distance, as well as Jesus coming into their homes and bringing life where there was death, spiritual death. And that is so exciting to see that happen. And wherever Jesus went and whoever he met, he changed people's lives with his touch, with his words. And ultimately, as we know, as he went to the cross. And life sometimes has unexpected change that we don't understand and will maybe never understand why these things have happened. But God is still moving. God is still working. God is still changing us to become who we should be as we become more like Jesus. Because Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. There's no change. We can have complete contentment and confidence in him. Sometimes life can change in an instant. I was thinking about that woman this week that you have seen in the news who's been in prison for 6 years in Iran. She was there. She went with her 1-year-old daughter to go and visit her mother, to take the wee girl to see her granny in Iran. And she was captured and she was taken and she was imprisoned. She was accused of being a spy. She was held there for all these years and people have been campaigning to see her set free. And she would have done anything to have her situation changed, to be reunited and reconnected with her wee girl. I don't know if you saw the images the other day as the woman comes off the plane and the wee girl says to her dad, "Is that mummy?" The anticipation, waiting to be reunited and connected after that time, after all the diplomatic negotiations that had to take place to try and get this girl's freedom. And ultimately, the countless pleas that were made in order to change her situation and to change that wee family, it seemed that nothing was working until a deal was done the court cases that had been held to hear of her innocence. And then suddenly, almost like we read in the Gospels, as we see when Jesus met people, it was often the word suddenly or immediately. There was change, and she got up that day and was told, "You're being set free." Can you imagine how that would have felt? Can you imagine her experience as she was waiting to be reunited with her family? She boarded that plane. But her freedom came at a cost. I don't know if you saw in the reports, but it's estimated that it cost the British government £400 million to secure her freedom. A historic debt from the 1970s, I believe, that hadn't been paid, that the Iranian government says, if you give us that money, then we'll make the change. And that woman's life was changed in a moment, changed in an instant. In fact, when Jesus is talking to the woman who he healed, that had touched from a distance, he said that her faith had healed her and that she was free. And you can imagine how this girl felt as she was released in that moment. And what a cost that was involved to change her situation. There is no way on this earth that girl will ever be able to repay financially that debt that was paid to the Iranian government. It was a powerful scene to see that reconnection take place. And you can imagine how they're enjoying each other's company and just their embrace in every single moment. We look in our world and we see the big changes that have happened in an instant. One day, no war. The next day, war. We see cities that one day were operating as normal and now are completely flattened to the ground. I don't know if any of you saw Dave's post this week from Poland with some of the money that we were able to contribute, and I know some of you personally have contributed. Over £31,000 raised to try and help these people who have fled Ukraine. They think 3 million people whose lives changed in a moment, and they would do anything to go back to what they had. They would do anything to secure their lives before. But the reality of that is it's broken and it's in ruins, and they're trying to find a place of safety. And it's horrible when you look at even in our own personal lives as a church, the changes that have happened in an instant, and we would do anything in some ways to restore what was before. But as I finish today in thinking about the changes that have happened over these past 2 years, one of the things that I've loved seeing is people finding Jesus. Through the Alpha courses that we've enjoyed, through one-to-one discipleship and Bible study, it's been amazing to see people see Jesus for who he is and recognised that there was a cost that was paid one day on a cross at Calvary that can never be repaid. There was nothing that we could do to repair our brokenness, to restore our lives to a relationship with God if it wasn't for Jesus. And because of what happened, and we're going to be thinking about that as we come up towards Easter, it was at a cost that only Jesus could pay. And as a result, I hope that it's changed your life and your experience and your encounter with God, because that relationship has been restored. That you would be changed from that moment and every day be changed and transformed into the version of you that God intended you to be more like Jesus, and to be open to change, however that would look. I was thinking about that when it came to that story of this girl who has had 400 million put down, and her and another guy get free. There's still a guy who was imprisoned. He never got set free. But thinking the freedom that came that moment where I met Jesus. And since that time as a wee boy to this point now, Jesus has never changed. He's never let me down. He's been faithful. When the world has turned upside down, he's been faithful. When life has been difficult, he's been faithful. When we've had times of rejoicing, he's been faithful. And most of the time when it comes to my relationship with God, suffering is because I change, no him. Because my priorities change, no his. My direction changes, no his. My heart changes, no his. And I believe when we flip it the other way around to say, Jesus, change my heart, oh God. Change my priorities, change my perspective, change my passion. Change my dependence, change my contentment, change my confidence to completely trust in you. What has COVID taught us over these past 24 months? Well, it's taught us a lot. What's it showed us? It showed us a lot. In some ways, it's helped us to refocus on what is important in life. That verse in Hebrews that I read at the start says, don't love money. Don't love stuff. Don't love position. Don't love all the things that the world can offer you, because it's not going to give you contentment. Because as we saw, in a heartbeat, it can be taken away. But if we are going to live a life that honours God, we need to recognise that we need to be open to change. And even we see that in the life of our church. We've had to make changes, adjustments. We've had to do things that we never thought we would ever have to do. But God's been able to use it. And God's been able to change lives along the way. And I hope there is a moment in your life that you can say, I remember the day when I met Jesus and it changed everything. I remember the day when I found forgiveness and freedom at the cross. And I put my sin into Jesus' hands and I was forgiven. And I was given hope. And I was given security. And I was given heaven. I hope there's a day that is etched into your calendar where you can say, I remember in September 1989 when I met Jesus. And here is how it has changed my life. Do you know what I'd love to do next week? And I'm being serious about this. I'd love to get some of you up here telling me about the change that Jesus has made in your life. From that moment you met him till this very moment. But it brings a challenge, doesn't it? And the challenge is, as I finish, if you're not seeing change, we need to re-look. We need to reassess. And we need to recommit our lives to Jesus. And allow him to change us for the inside out. And see the world change as a result. Who would have thought 24 months ago on this day we would have put up our first ever service online? Who would have thought that there would have been 57,500 views of this wee church in Cumbernauld? Who would have thought there would have been lives transformed with people sitting in Zoom talking about Jesus, talking about the life transformation that comes in our Alpha courses, in our Tuesday night prayer and discussion? Who would have thought today that we would sit here and be able to say, what a faithful God have I, faithful in every way. So we're going to sing a wee song that kind of just brings that all to a close, and it's one that we love to sing. Jesus paid it all. There was nothing that we could do that was going to make us right with God, but Jesus paid it all, and all to him I owe. That crimson stain that had stained us, that had blotted us, has been washed as white as snow. Have you experienced that change? If you haven't, you can right now. Let's use this song as a wee prayer as we finish, and then we're going to go into a time of communion together.
Say
One of the things that's awesome as we come every week is that we're able to come and remember the sacrifice that was made at Calvary and taking communion together.